I heard that in our phone conversation, but
Oh, Lenny.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lanice.
Oh, okay. My family and friends affectionately call me Nisi,
Oh,
but
okay.
Lanice. So I'm still at early education nonprofit agency as a center leader. I have 4 more classes left, and I will graduate with my second master's degree in transformational leadership. um your discussion post was, you asked like what are your future goals, what are you kind of like looking forward to doing. I'm trying to kind of navigate through that and trying to figure out what is it that I want to do. What I currently do right now, I like a portion of it, but the paperwork of it, I'm like, not quite my fix. But I'm interested in a lot of different things like presenting, being a consultant. I like the admin part of it. I also like education and community partnerships. So I told Dr. Les that we need to talk because I need to figure out like, okay, when I get finished with this degree, like what am I going to,
One
you
of
know,
the
do
one of the
next?
good things is with this degree, there's a variety of ways you can go. And
Okay.
I heard Angela say athletic director. That's a yes. One of the ones that people don't think about, maybe, is a title coordinator or a title director, director of a title program, special education coordinator. These are some of the other kinds of positions. But don't get into special education if you don't like paperwork, because that's what it's all paperwork. Well, let me give you a little bit of my training experience and background with school law. Some of you, of course, know about my experience with school finance. Beyond my formal schooling, I've attended numerous legal workshops and participated in various meetings that introduce laws. And in my role as a principal and superintendent of schools, I often introduced new laws to the staff, ultimately implementing them in the district. I taught school law and advanced school law for many years at Franciscan University of Steubenville, that's in Ohio. I also have presented numerous legal seminars on topics such as cyberbullying and staff employment. I have further stayed current with regard to the federal laws, and for this class, I researched Michigan law, found a few things interesting and different than my experience with Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania as I developed this course. And probably my proudest moment is that I never had a lawsuit filed against my district nor one of my staff members on my watch. So let's go ahead and go a little bit through the course. And I so vividly remember myself taking my first school law class. I actually had two school law classes, one in my graduate school, my master's, and one in my doctorate. And when I took that class, I wasn't sure what I was going to get into. I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit concerned. The book was thick, and I thought, oh my goodness sakes, how am I ever going to put all this together? And so over the years of working with students, I've come across, or I've come through some processes to help you kind of weed through some of the chaff and get to the meat, so to speak. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that process to you so that you'll feel a little bit more comfortable, I hope, in delving into this course, which can be extraordinarily challenging, to say the least. So the text that we use is School Law for Teachers, Concepts and Applications by Nathan Essex. It's a fairly good book. My only concern about the book, and I'll tell you this a little bit later, is that he tends to get into the weeds a little bit deep with some cases that don't have tremendous bearing on the outcome of our profession. I like to stick to what's called the landmark cases. A landmark case is a case that change the way we do things and set precedents on doing things. And as time goes on, you'll see how that goes. So one of the ways I've attempted to kind of bring focus on this material into the very important pieces of material is, of course, they're contained in the modulars. And those modules are about 1 hour in length. I just got done putting together the special ed one, and sadly, it's about an hour and a half, but I can't weed it down any more than that. On the other hand, school finance is about 20 minutes, so they kind of come out in the wash, so to speak. But in the modulars, I have videos, podcasts, Word documents, PDF files, and websites. And the intent is to underscore the key material from the text, okay? So when you're reading that text, I suggest that you read it somewhat casually. Yes, read it and go from there, okay? The other thing that, of course, having taught in a Catholic school and having had a number of Catholic school students over my years, I realized that this particular book focuses on public education primarily, okay? So I work to supplement that material for Catholic educators, as I do with my school finance class as well. I also am aware that technology issues have surfaced. And in fact, one of my former students told me, he says, Doc, he said, with law things, everything I deal with has to do with technology these days. I said, yeah, I get that. And of course, staying current with some of the recent things that are taking place is also important. I want to share a couple stories with you. I like my stories. And it's about two individuals. The first guy, who was a slacker in my class. I read his name in our local newspaper headlines years later when he was a principal because he violated students' due process rights. The school superintendent, unfortunately, and for you people who are preparing to be assistant principals and principals, you need to hear that you have backup, or you should have backup, let's say. There should be somebody who is overseeing your introduction into a leadership position. But in this particular case, I don't know what happened, but the school superintendent, he also must have been a slacker because a lawsuit was filed against the district and they lost. I never could find out. In fact, they had a gag order on how much they had to give those kids, but I'm sure it was a sizable amount, okay? The second story, a little bit more interesting, I think. Well, I don't know if it's more interesting, but so I'm teaching a law class and just got done with student rights. Staff rights. And a student comes up to me after class, this is a face-to-face class, and he asks me on my opinion about a potential legal situation that he was confronted with, and basically was asking me what I thought he should do, basically. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and so therefore I don't bill myself that way. I've obviously had lots of experience with legal issues, and so therefore I, was happy to lend an ear to what he had to tell me. He had been substituting in this district, a public school, by the way, for a number of years. He was told that he was the best applicant for the position, but he had to enroll his child from a parochial school into the public school, or he was not going to get the position. Yeah, that's the case. That's the scenario. And in the meantime, I'm also, it happened to be where Franciscan was located, the city school district where Franciscan was located. And so I knew that I just couldn't come out and say, blast the superintendent. I wasn't going to do that. I had to be a little bit smart. So what I told him is I said, you need to talk to an attorney immediately. He did that. And as a result, this case, Barrett versus Steubenville City Schools, is now in the law books. He won the case, although he told me he didn't get a great settlement. He did win the case because, of course, of the errors that were made. And so I guess the reason for both those stories is this stuff is real. The cases you're going to be reading about are real. The real people went through anguish, perhaps. They went through trials and tribulations. And so we never want to forget that process. Obviously, legal mistakes can have costly penalties when the law is not followed. And so I strongly urge you, I urge you to dedicate about 3 hours per week for this class. The reason it will pay benefits to you, one of the first things that you feel benefited by is your confidence. When you're faced with a situation or you see a situation, you're going to have confidence that you know what your legal rights are, and perhaps what the legal rights are of the student or your coworker or whatever. So that's the first thing. Dedicate about 3 hours per week for this course. And I know that we're busy people. I'm busy, not as busy as I used to be, but we have to make, in order to gain the best from this course, you got to dedicate time to study and to learn the material. Okay. And so I'm going to give you some other tips that students have told me and that I've learned through the process. One of the things that I always found interesting is that typically about after we get through the staff material, the light kind of goes on, and all of a sudden it starts to make sense. Particularly because people are typically more attuned to student issues than they maybe are with staff issues. So with this class, we've already figured out that Blackboard Ultra we're going to experience some growing pains with Blackboard Ultra, and we'll work through it and we'll be fine. So right now you should be able to see 2 modules. And once again, you click on the module, and what you'll see underneath each one of those is you'll see an overview, and then you'll see the activities. What I want you to do is when you click on the overview, you're going to see the objectives for that particular module. You're going to see the terms for that particular module. You're going to see the legal sources for that module. Copy and paste those and put those into a Word document, a study guide, so to speak. Now, as you are looking at those terms, there are going to be some terms and you don't have to spend any time on them. You might want to validate that your definition for them is accurate, but you aren't going to have to spend a lot of time with them, so you can move on. But there are probably going to be terms that you've never heard of, my guess. And of course, the cases, you probably have not heard about the cases. You maybe have heard about the statutes, but you might not have heard about the cases. And once again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you the most important statutes and landmark cases, typically U.S. Supreme Court cases, that change the way we do business. Okay? So as we go through this, we want you to get a routine, so to speak, of looking at this information. So after you have those and you've looked through that list of terms, even the cases, maybe you've heard of them, type a sentence or two to give you the definition. Now read the text. Now read the text. And once again, do not try to digest everything that is said in that text, because as I said, there are some cases that he gets deep into that I scratch my head saying, I don't know why he did that, because those, and many times what happens is a case supports another case. And they might give you a little bit of different view, but there's just too much. there's just way too much. If you tried to learn every one of those cases, it's impossible. It's very impossible. So as you're reading, though, you're going to come across you should come across some of those cases that I've identified for you and statutes. Make note of those. Make note of those. Those will serve you well when we get around to the quiz. Okay. So, by the way, one of the things that I've noticed with uploading assignments in Blackboard Ultra, you drag and drop. Before you upload it, you just drag and drop. So that's kind of different. But the one thing that I've done for you for this class that I wish I would have done for the last class is I gave you assignment due dates. Use that to keep yourself on track with assignments and things such as that. Okay. So
I have a question.
yes,
I'm looking
yeah, go ahead, ask questions as we go.
I'm worried that I missed something just because of the new setup. So you're saying, okay, I press on the classroom, the class that we're in. On top, there's the content, there's the calendar, announcements, discussion, gradebook, messages, and groups.
Yes.
So where, and all the way at the bottom.
So you want to go down a little bit further, and you're going to see modulars.
Okay, so I see course module. There's one.
When you click on, yes, when you click on that, module 1 comes up.
Yes.
And what you'll see is just a little paragraph, basically, about the topic for that week.
Okay.
Okay.
But everything's still locked, right?
I'm sorry.
Everything is still locked.
No.
There's a lock button next to it, and I can't press on it.
As of right now, you should be able to see module 1 overview.
I'm not able to press on. I mean, I can see the paragraph, but right next to the folder, there's a lock button.
Have you done everything in module 0? Because I found that module 1 was only unlocked once I completed everything in module 0.
That is exactly right,
Angela,
I couldn't get on Zoom.
Yeah, you just nailed it, Angela. So one of the things I've learned about Blackboard Ultra, you have to go through step by step by step. If you do not go step by step by step, it won't let you go you can't skip.
Is there anything that's actually due in module 0?
Yeah, you had to do you just had to read some stuff, obviously, and also the thread or the discussion. They call them discussions, not
when is that due?
What's that?
When is module 0 due?
Whenever. But you see,
I need to do it
the thing you've already learned with Ultra, you've got to go through each one of these steps, or it won't let you go to the next step, which is kind of interesting. I mean,
well, thank you for clarifying, because that's why I was worried.
I'm glad, Angela. I mean, I didn't see, these are the kind of growing pains we're going to have. Okay. And the big thing is, don't get excited. Well, I'll tell you when we get around to the quizzes, I'll tell you the thing that I still don't know what's going to happen yet. We'll just have to play it by ear. So after you've copied and pasted those, do your reading. And once again, read kind of casually. Okay. But when you come across one of those cases, and all you need to do is look for what the case outcome was. The case outcome, that's the most important part. Okay. Now there's 3 parts to a case. There's usually the legal question. What were they trying to discover? What was being questioned? Then the facts of the case, and you can get really in the weeds of the facts of a case, to say the least. And then, of course, the holding or the outcome or the results or the opinion. And we get into a majority opinion and a minority opinion with cases. And so anyway, after you've done the reading, now go into the activities. And once again, as you're going through those activities, okay, and I put those activities in an order, trying to guide you from one situation to the next. I take a whole different path than what Dr. Essex does in the book. I start out like he does. We start out, you have to be grounded in the legal system. You have to understand that we have a three-part legal system at the federal level. We have a three-part system at the state level. Most states, not all states, but most states do. And that cases will either go to the federal court if it's a question, legal question on a federal situation, a First Amendment or something such as that. But if it's a state question about maybe testing or something such as that, then it will go through the state courts. The state court then, if you go to the Michigan Supreme Court and you still want further, you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, for example, you then can petition to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court may accept your case, they may not accept your case. It just depends. So you have to have a fair understanding. Now, I show you how legal cases are cited, the legal citation for a Supreme Court case, for a statute, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to know that overall, but when you see it, I want you to realize when you see MCL, that's a Michigan statute. That's a Michigan statute, okay? So read casually and then start through the activities. As you are working through those activities, fill in the blanks on your study guide. Fill in your blanks. So for example, there's one, I need to back up. So what I do in this course is I start with the legal system like he does, that's module 1, but I go into staff rights. I go from staff rights to, or actually hiring staff, to staff rights, to staff liability, and we get through the staff information. And then there are about 3 or 4 topics in his book that, I mean, for example, school desegregation. He has a chapter on school desegregation. School desegregation has absolutely very little to do with today's educators. Very little to do. We went through the 70s, we went through the busing, we went through all that kind of stuff. And so therefore, that's the case. He has a chapter on school finance. And although I like school finance, in this particular course, you don't need to know a lot about school finance, okay? That's why it's the last module. After you get through the staff, then we go through those. I give you a little bit of break with some of those fluffy topics. I call them fluffy topics. And then we get into the heavier topics of student rights. We get into student rights. We get into student situations. Then we get into special education. And then we wind up the class. But he kind of goes all over the place to some degree. And another situation is religion. His second chapter is on religion, okay? Well, in public schools, at this particular juncture, many different legal issues have been resolved already. Now, there was a very current one, a Kennedy case. A coach in a public school, a coach went to midcourt, he was a football coach, went to midfield after every game, kneeled and prayed. People took exception to this. It just got settled last year, I think it was last year or the year before, and it was found that he had the right to do that, and he got his job back. Good for him. But in general, many of the public school issues have been going on for quite some time. So that's another one of those that you don't need to spend a lot of time on. Of course, being in Catholic school, you know, fair game. Pray in school, do whatever you want to do. It's fair game. After you've read the chapter, then work through those activities and fill in the gaps on your study guide, okay? And once again, getting in this routine will be very, very worthwhile to you, because at first it might be cumbersome to you, but as time goes on, it will become more natural to you, and you'll be able to speed your time along, and you'll be more efficient with what you're doing. Okay, so we have 5 time quizzes. School finance people don't like my quizzes, but this is another one of these courses where I want to know that you have an understanding of the content. And I'm not trying to trap you or trick you, but I want you to show me that you understand the basic content. So there'll be 5 quizzes. They're timed, but you don't need to worry about that because it'll go on. Now, this is something that I don't know yet through Blackboard Ultra. I set the quizzes for Monday night at 6 o'clock to open at 6 o'clock. But in the old Blackboard, I could say I wanted it to start at 6 and I wanted it to close at 9. Couldn't do that now. I don't know what happened. I have a feeling that quiz will stay up there, but I don't. We'll just have to play through this and see how it goes and go from there. One of the challenges I had with school finance, and people who had me in that class understood this, there was too much, I felt there was way too much distance between learning the content and reviewing the content and then being tested on the content. So for this class, what I'm going to try to do, and I hope that it works, we're going to have a Zoom meeting on Thursday. Okay, 6 o'clock. I'm open to other time frame if we need to, but Thursday at 6, what we'll be doing is we'll be going over your study guides. And in this particular case, I wasn't stern enough with school finance people. In this one, I'm going to be a little bit more stern. I'm going to say, you tell me, what does this mean? You tell me what that means, because you should have studied it by that time. Okay. Typically, there are going to be 5 discussions, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Typically, the assignments and discussions are due on a Friday, and your test is on Monday. So once again, you have the weekend to maybe review things and go from that. So I'm hoping that process works for everybody, because I think you'll find it to be very, very helpful. So we collapse the time frame between the review, giving you time to study, and then the quiz on Mondays. Does that sound like doable? Does that sound doable? Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I just want to make sure that that works, because it's very helpful. So when you take the quiz, and typically there are multiple choice questions, there's usually about 20 of them. I give you about 30 minutes, but I don't use books, don't use your notes, don't use any of that, because these are things, the questions I'm asking are things that you should know as an aspiring administrator. They're the big concepts, the important concepts. And what I do when I construct the quiz is I go to those objectives, and I usually pick 1 or 2 questions from those objectives. So that's why those objectives become important in your learning process. Okay. So questions about the quizzes? Any questions about that? And once again, I think the individuals who have me for school finance realize that I'm not trying to be picky-uni with these questions. I just want you to demonstrate to me that you got the big concepts that we're working on. Okay. So the second part of the class is an application part of the class, and there are two assignments that are of application. It's one thing to know the law. It's a second and most important to apply the law appropriately. And so to help you get into that application mode, I have scenarios. I give you a real life scenario, and each one of you will get a different scenario. And we want you to, as you're reviewing, I think it'll just jump out at you that this is what we're talking about. You're going to identify what the legal guidance is for the scenario, and what you should do. In general, that's the way those go. And everybody will be working on a different scenario. And E, you're going to be student 1 throughout the course. So whenever you get discussion and you see student 1, read that particular scenario, and then you'll be working to identify what the legal issue is and what you should do appropriately. Okay? Nawal, you're student 2. Angela, you'll be student 3. Ezra, student 4. Carissa, you're student 5. And Lanice, you're student 6. And you will keep that throughout the whole course. Okay? Now, after, and I give you I don't want you to write a whole lot, you don't have to write a whole lot of
The
stuff.
number you gave us right now is the one we're sticking with?
Yes.
So you said I was 2?
If you're in the wall, yes, you're 2.
Just to
Yeah.
confirm, yeah, the other E would, okay, so
Yes,
2.
I'm 5, right?
Yeah, you're student 2. Okay. And so you'll read your case, and all you'll do, I asked you, number 1, what's the guidance? What's the legal guidance? Now, it could be a statute, it could be a case, could be one of those 2. And then we ask you, what are you going to do? Okay, what will you do? And we don't need a lot of verbiage there, just a sentence or 2, and that's all you need to do. Now, in the meantime, I always give you examples. So I give you an example of how to post that. Here's the second part of the discussion. We want you to go back. So everybody has their discussion post done by midnight on Friday. By Sunday night, we want you to have read your other classmate or your classmates' scenarios and decide whether they're on target. Now, if they're on target, that means that they had the right guidance and they took the right steps. They could be partially correct. They could have perhaps the right legal guidance, but maybe their actions were a little bit off. Okay, they're partially correct, or they could be completely off base. They had the wrong legal guidance, and their actions were wrong. So by Sunday, we will want you to have read everybody's discussion, their initial posts, and make a judgment as to whether or not they are on point or not. Now, what this is also going to do for you is it's also going to help you review, because many of these things are the important issues that we get into. Okay? So after you see the examples I give you, you'll figure it out. Okay? Questions on the discussion?
When is the discussion due for us?
So over the course, I have 5 discussions, and they're kind of sporadically spread out throughout the course. I tried to pick the most important topics, the most important scenarios, and kind of go from there. Okay, and they are just single issues. There are single issues, single legal issues. Okay, so once again, look at that due date and you'll figure that out. Okay, and if you're marching through the course as Blackboard Ultra requires you to do, then you'll see that. Okay.
But my question is, I'm sorry. So if we reply back to a classmate on Sunday, do we have enough time?
I think, yeah, you'll have enough. You know, I've had my average. I had students that had or classes that had 15 students in it. That was a lot of stuff. I gave them a little bit more time, but with 6 students, well, actually, for E, for example, student 1 should put, that's me. You don't even have to, you just have to react to 5. Okay, you just put down, it's me. So yeah, I think you'll have time. And in the meantime, it's a form of studying as well, because you're going to be thinking about those same kind of things that you're going to be tested on coming down the pike. So unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, but unfortunately, legal issues don't come in just one at a time. Oftentimes, there are 2 or 3 things that are going on that all have legal overtures. And so therefore, through, you'll have two, what I call case studies. And with case studies, there's going to be, it'll be about a paragraph or two as the case study, and you're going to identify each one of the legal issues, and you're going to decide whether or not the actions were appropriate or not. And once again, I give you some examples for that. We'll have another chance to talk a little bit more about the cases, but the cases are over a grouping of modulars, okay? And there's a case study that's on, and I can't do this off the top of my head, but there's a case study on staff. I think I can. There's a case study that's dealing with the staff modulars, and there's a case study that deals with student modulars. And I'll be very candid with you. I mean, I'm not trying to trick anybody. I'm just trying to get people, geared up to situations. So the second case deals with a student who brings a gun to school. And another student walks into your office as the principal and tells you that this student had the gun on the bus. And he said he was going to use it during cafeteria lunch. That's your scenario. That's it. Variety of things got to happen here. And of course, you've got to be ready and prepared to deal with these kinds of situations. And there are things you should be doing. First of all, and we walk you through this. You lock the school down, first of all. You make sure that the student is isolated. You end up making sure that the superintendent is notified or your supervisors are notified. You also call the cops, for example. So I'm giving you all this, but I'm not going to say more because I want you to do it. You do it yourself, okay? But those case studies are another part of the class. The other assignments are these. You will be writing an official employee reprimand letter. We give you some examples to look at. You'll come up with the name of the person you're reprimanding. You'll come up with the situation in which you're reprimanding that individual. And by the way, that becomes a legal document. That's why it's so important. And we want to make sure that you write a good reprimand letter or know how to write a good reprimand letter, because if you don't, it could cost the district. Okay. The other thing we are having you do is we want you to review your district or school board's policies, not all of them, just a section of them about governance, the student handbook, emergency operation plans, and the acceptable use of policies. And so we have a checklist. You go through the checklist, you mark off, yes, we do this, yes, we do this. You tell me the legal reference, and that's those. And those are spread out throughout the course as well. Those are the assignments, okay? Any questions on those assignments? Once again, I can't say that I give you examples of the reviews, but they're pretty self-explanatory. I'm asking you, does your student handbook give you the consequences for various offenses? Yes, no, whatever. And what's by the way, there's Michigan law that requires that, okay? So that's that information. So we've reviewed assignments. Once again, I know that right now you might be, scratching your head, but we'll give you lots of examples, and eventually we'll get this figured out. Okay, don't fret over it. We'll get it done. Okay. Other questions that you might have at this point? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and overall, my intent in this course is not to overwhelm you with trivial bits of info about court cases. That's not what we want to do, but we want you to lead you in understanding the most consequential legal guidance that you must follow to keep yourself out of hot water and protect your own personal assets, which is very important. Okay, that's why dedicating time, I think, will serve you well. It'll serve you well if you dedicate that time. Of course, if you have questions during the course, feel free to email me. Give me some time to get back with you. Usually I'm pretty responsive. If you'd like to talk to me, give me a call. My phone number is listed there in the course introduction. This concludes our overview. I'm looking forward to the course. I'm excited to get to know each one of you, and I hope you enjoy the class. Questions, comments?
Oh, I do have a question.
Okay.
So I saw two things. I saw Mondays at 4:30, and then today's Zoom started at 6. Do we meet on Mondays at 4:30, or do we meet on Mondays at 6 p.m.?
Mondays at 6, unless the group wants to change that. Okay, if the group wants to change that, I'm willing to change. I want to keep it. It's on Thursdays, actually. The Zoom meetings are on Thursdays. Okay.
Today was just a day for us to meet.
Today was the start.
Thursday
of the class. Yes, today was the start of the class. The normal routine is going to be a Zoom meeting prior to a quiz, Zoom meeting on Thursday, discussion, an assignment due on Friday, and Monday will be the quiz. Okay.
Okay.
Keeping you in that order. Okay. And once again, you're going to feel overwhelmed to start. I think that's generally what I find. My students are just overwhelmed, but as time goes on, it clicks. You start to see where we're going with this. And the bottom line is, I want to make sure that when you're in a leadership position, I don't want to read your name in the national news.
I just want to be clear. Our next Thursday meeting is September 5th.
That sounds about right. And I think September 9th maybe is or the 5th is a Thursday, Friday's the 6th, Saturday's the 7th. 8th, yes, 9th would be the first quiz.
So we will be meeting every Thursday, or just
No. I think there are 6. We have 6 Zoom meetings for the course.
Okay.
5 quizzes.
Like the previous class, right before the quiz, we meet, go over it.
Yes. And once again, back to school finance for a moment. I told you guys I didn't like that lag time. I thought the lag time was a mess. So I collapsed the lag time and made it so that you're studying the material in preparation for the review. So this time I can ask you some questions, and I'm hoping you have some answers for me, which you just couldn't in school finance because of the way it was set up. And I got that, and it was a learning experience as was. So I think you'll find this to be a little bit much more functional, so to speak, with the content. And once again, trying to zoom in on the most important pieces of the statutes and the cases that have impacted us in the past, and but we still have to abide by. As I think about this, I'll just share one last story with you. So one of the cases that Essex does not include in his book, and I'm astonished that he doesn't. It's a Loudermill, Cleveland Board of Education versus Loudermill. And what this case did was, this case, prior to this case, a school superintendent, for example, could fire somebody with no due process rights, none. This was in the 70s when this case came about. Okay, he doesn't mention this. I'm astonished, because it's a very important case. I can't stress how important it is. It's a very important case, because what happened was the guy lied on his application. They found out that he lied on his application. He got fired. Everything think it's fine, right? Well, not so fast. He went into district court. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said, it doesn't matter that he lied. You you fired him without giving him his opportunity to tell his side of the story and to give him information. And it set in today's world, you've got to do that. If you are getting ready to reprimand a staff member, or you're getting ready to take job action against a staff member, you can't just do it on a whim. You've got to give them due process rights. And in my ear, as I'm telling you the story, and sadly, I took job action against about 3 or 4 staff members over my superintendent career. And I remember, and so, and once again, there's always backup. Before I did anything, when I knew that this situation was brewing, I contacted our school attorney. And he and I dialogued before I took any action. But the thing he always told me, and I can hear it, I can hear his voice in my ear. Did you give him, make sure you give him Loudermill rights? And I knew what that meant. I had to tell him straight up front what job action and what the investigation. We were going through an investigation. And this is why we were going through an investigation. And once again, thankfully, I never had to, because we took those preventative actions before doing something, we found ourselves not getting involved in legal trouble. So that's how, I mean, I can't stress on you how important this stuff is. It's just darned important. And yeah, some people don't know their own rights, but in today's world, you could, take special education, for example. Oh my gosh, people know their rights. And if they don't, there's an attorney out there willing to support them. A number of the websites I give you are actually from law firms, because they're actually telling people, here's what you should expect. Here's what can happen. And here's what ought to happen. So anyway, that's where we are today. And, the one thing that I'm always aware of is Catholic schools function a little bit different from legal perspective. Okay. However, you get to the amendments, free speech. You don't want to, even if you are in a Catholic school, you do not want to violate a person's free speech right, period. So there are some things, particularly with the delivery of lessons and those kinds of things, that you may not have to be so concerned about. But in general, it's still a good idea to know what the law is, perhaps in a public school, but also how it fits into the Catholic school. We give you resources for Catholic educators as well. Okay. Well, good luck.
I just have one last question. For the
Yes.
discussion board, we reply to one person?
I'm sorry, for the discussion?
Mhm.
No, what you're going to do in this discussion is you're going to be reading the other 5 people in the class, their scenarios, which is just a sentence or two. You're going to say, do they have the right legal source? If the answer is yes, what are their actions? Oh, yes, they're doing the right thing. And all you say is student 2 on target. Student 3 partial target. Here's why you missed it. You didn't have the right case. Okay. And
How
once
about
again,
for session 0, like the module 0?
all that's there is just the course introduction, that video, the due date, the syllabus,
Okay.
stuff like that. My phone number, my bio, and I don't think you even have to read that. I think it's a matter of clicking on the item.
But we don't have to reply, right?
What's that?
We don't have to reply for that discussion, the introduction?
No. No. Just provide your information. That's not even graded. Okay.
Okay.
Professor, I just wanted to make sure, you said I was number 5, right? It's E speaking.
I think you're 2.
No,
Here's
no, I'm
here-
2.
Oh, my
No,
God.
you're 1. Here's why I know you're 1. I did it alphabetical. No big deal here. I did it alphabetical.
Oh,
And that
You're
Carissa
the
was
first person. You're the first alphabetical person in the class.
So Carissa's 1. I know I'm 2.
Yes.
No, I'm 5.
Oh,
I'm
great.
student 5.
Did I mess up your, did I screw up alphabetically?
You're 5. Okay, so I'm lost. I'm 2. What am I?
I'm
Okay, you're
6.
2. Okay, let me go back here and,
Can you like send it in an email just so that we have it?
yeah,
So-
I will. I'll send it an email
Thank you.
if I can find it right away. B's 1, Nawal's 2, Angela's 3, Ezra's 4, Clarice's 5, Lanisa's 6. And by the way, I always have a couple of extra of those. And I'm glad I did this time because when Lanise enrolled, she was a 6th student in the class, and boom, I had six scenarios. So I hope I don't have a 7th. I've had this happen to me. I hope I don't have a 7th scenario or 7th student, because then I got to go back and create. I mean, I have them. I obviously store them. Okay. So the thing that I, once again, I implore you to take the time to learn this content, because it will serve you well in your career. Because it's, I told you about 2 situations, and you just don't know what situations you could possibly find yourself. Okay. I will leave you with one situation that I was in. Okay. So I am later in my career, and I'm interviewing. I'm a superintendent of schools, and I'm interviewing for another superintendency. And I went for a callback. There were 2 or 3 of us called back for another interview. I get a call from the guy who was conducting the interview, and he was a well-respected individual. He tells me, I was older, he told me that the individual that got the job because he had young kids. My jaw about dropped to the floor. That I definitely had a case of age discrimination. No question, I had a case. Now, I thought about it for a little while, and I decided that I wasn't going to follow up on it. Primarily because, and I hate to say this, but Patrick, the guy that I told you about, he eventually, he's not in education anymore. He got blackballed, in my opinion. And I said to myself, I'm nearing the end of my career. I know that I'm going to maybe, do one more thing or whatever. So I'm just not going to go through the hassle. I just let it go. But I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that he told me that. I said, whatever, So once again, you just never know what you're going to find yourself in. But being attuned to those kinds of things serves you well. And by the way, age discrimination starts at 40.
Oh.
If you're 40 or over, you could be considered old. And you'll find this out when you read about the Age Discrimination Act. The Age Discrimination Act listed 40 as the age. And the little scenario the scenario I gave on that one, it was the person was 42. Anyway, have a good evening, folks, and just dedicate some time to this course. That's what you're going to have to do. I'm just being straight with you. You got to dedicate time for it, but I think you'll find it to be worthwhile. Okay.
Thank you.
With that, we shall see you at the next Zoom meeting.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye-bye.